Welcome everyone to our next webinar. This is our 202nd webinar since we started doing these. I'm your host Roger Caddell from AIM Sports, National Training Manager, and today we're going to talk about ABS braking with confidence. Analyze, learn, and apply. One of the things we like to do on these webinars is spend a little bit of time and dig in a little bit deeper about how do we actually do the work of analysis with Race Studio and give you some real world problems along then with the work process and then the solution and how we can do that. And it's something we're going to do today with our guest, Jeff Wasilko. Welcome, Jeff. Thanks for jumping on with us and joining us on this important topic.
Oh, thanks for having me, Roger. It's great to sit down with you again. It's always fun. I always love attending, and it's really nice to get a chance to get down and talk data with you.
I was looking back, and this is Jeff's third time he's co-hosted with us and talked about different things. And we'll link his prior webinars in the chat box. Anything we talk about today live, if you're watching this later on YouTube, all of these links, anything we say we're going to link into the chat box will be down in the description below, so you'll be able to link and click on anything we talk about there as well. So, but when I look back, it's been quite a while since you joined us. I think it was back in year 2, I think, if I remember right. So
Yeah.
it's been a while. You and I talk a lot and chat back and forth and even see each other at the track occasionally. But we haven't had you come on and join us. So really happy to have you joining us here in the process, the absolute process that you've by changing your car and doing what you've done and being willing to share this. This is a very common problem, a common process that people are following, and it's been pretty clear with the number of people that have joined just to be watching this one, and now joining us live right now. So I think people really are interested in seeing what we're going to talk about. Looking
Looking forward
forward
to
to
sharing.
it. Yeah, just a little bit about Jeff. He's been a data user since 2006. In motorsports at least, right? Probably a little bit longer than that in his job and in his real world, but does a lot of motorsports things: time trials, sprints, endurance, sim racing. The leads the Com Sports Car Club's advanced data coaching program, which is where I talk with Jeff quite a bit. It's always a big part of what I do is to help. If somebody is helping somebody, I see that as part of my job is to help them as much as I absolutely can to spread out the growth of knowledge on AIM products and AIM software. So always happy to help. And as I mentioned, a 3-time AIM Sports webinar co-host. A couple pictures of his car. This is the car we're going to talk about a lot today. And I'd like to maybe turn it over to you, Jeff, for just a little bit to chat a little bit more about yourself and your racing background and the car that we're about to go there, as it's shown there on the Paul Newman Straight.
Sounds good. Yeah, so I've been driving Miatas on the track since 2006. Is probably one of the best decisions I made as sort of progression. Having a great tool as a driver. The car has not stayed constant, which has been kind of fun. While I've been driving a Miata for what's coming up on 20 years, the car's been very different, and particularly over the last few years, the car's changed quite a bit. And I think we'll maybe touch on that a bit later, but it's not your typical street Miata at this point, and it's got a lot of tech in it. I think maybe Matt has more sensors in the car than I do, but I always think I want to try to find a case for more so I can get a little closer to the Chiquita. So
A nice friendly rivalry, right? Of seeing see who could stack their car with the most. I remember when my son was racing and we had a lot of AIM stuff. Not as much nearly as what you guys do, but he was always joking with me that he was afraid the car was going to burst into flames at any point, right? So, but never did, obviously. But he always would joke with me. So again, thanks for joining us, Jeff.
oh, pleasure.
This will be fun to have you walk us through the process as you started to learn about this kind of a different thing. Let's talk a little bit about the evolution of your 1990 Miata.
Yeah, sounds good. So I used to race. I started out racing with both COM in time trial, but also with SCCA in the Northeast region as an improved touring car, which is basically stock-ish engine, ECU and intake and exhaust, and some suspension work. And it was more of a handling class than anything else. And so the car ran in that spec for quite a long time. And then, come at the beginning of 2021, one of my competitors in Com's time trial series showed up with aero, And while that was not allowed in the improved touring rule set, in our time trial rule set, it was allowed. And so he sort of threw the gauntlet down and made us all sort of dip into the aero wars. And Nine Lives has got a really nice sort of out of the box aero setup for the car that really changed the way the car drove. It was kind of surprising how good the aero made the car feel and how much more comfortable it was to push. A friend of mine sort of described it like driving a Miata fast. You're like catching it 3 times a corner, and the aero just settles all that down. It makes it easy, I guess. And then coming in 2023, we within COM approached GridLife to see if we could borrow their GLTC rule set because we were looking for sort of a street tire based class that would allow a lot of sort of flexibility in build. And every time we were talking about it, we kept coming back to that as sort of an ideal rule set that we all liked. And Adam Gervais from GridLife was kind enough to let us use the rule set to make a time trial class. And it's basically it's kind of an engine swap class. It's built to 12.5 pounds per horsepower. With additions and modifiers for aero, ABS, wheel size, tire choice. But it's a pretty simple rule set. And now we've got 10 people running in our time trial class under that rule set, which I think is pretty good in 2 years. And it's, commonly an engine swap class, you see lots of K power Miatas, you see lots of K other things. And it's pretty common for older chassis to swap in ABS, which is sort of a precursor to where we end up. So in building to that rule set in 2024, sort of the off season leading into 2024, I swapped in a GM Ecotec 2.4 liter engine, which is a little different than the common K engine. And Ecotec Miata, which was a Canadian company but is now based in Michigan, has a swap kit that lets you drop that 2.4 liter engine into a Miata, and it fits beautifully. And so I ran a season with that, basically running against everybody else in my class having ABS and me not. And it was pretty obvious that there was a difference there. And we'll dive a little bit into that data. But we, within our class, share a lot of data. We do a lot of coaching internally, but also within the class, we make a good point of like helping each other out because we all want to get better. It's fun, right? So in the off season leading into 2025, this year, I decided to swap in ABS. And RHT Motorsports, a guy named Doug Wardell, is sort of one of the best resources for that swap, and I was able to get a kit sort of secondhand, but from him originally. And that sort of leads into the story. But more than anything else, I want to thank Malcolm Austin at Series Motorsports because he's my mechanic / race engineer. And I may be project manager and check writer, but he's the guy that makes all the really good stuff happen. And he gives me a really confident and safe platform to drive. And having a car you can trust is amazing. So Malcolm does great work.
Kyle asks in a question, which ABS did you put in? Probably had not read ahead on that slide, but the BMW MK60, pretty popular as one that gets put into other cars, right?
Correct. And well, if you want to drop into, I don't know, is it the next slide or maybe there's a couple slides down, we'll talk a bit about that. But we can do that.
There's a picture of it, Kyle.
Yeah, so that's what it looks like. So the BMW it's a Tev's Mark 60 from the E46 chassis is interesting in that it can operate as a standalone system. All it needs is a brake switch trigger, power, and the module that detects, sort of car position. I forget what that's called now. So it can basically operate on its own. It doesn't care. It doesn't need the rest of the car's CAN systems to operate. There's also the systems from the E90, which are called the Mark 60 E1 and E5. Those also are relatively easy transplant. And so it's kind of surprising. And as I was talking to people that have driven them in a Miata, said that it is the perfect setup out of the box, particularly for Miata on street tires, on like 200 tread wear tires, that it just drives amazing. There are some modules that you can recode. They talk about having motorsports flashes or CSL tunes and things like that. But out of the box, people said you're just going to love it. And sure enough, it's pretty spectacular. So for my car, being it was a 1990 chassis, it never had ABS. And so it was a somewhat involved project because we had to add new axles for the back to get ABS tone rings, new spindles, which meant new brake ducts for the front, an extra brake line to the back because the way the Miata runs, there's just one brake line to the back and then it splits. And then beyond that, I was also told like, hey, ABS definitely puts a big toll on the brakes. It's going to put a lot more heat in. And I was already not quite happy with the stock brake pad wear. And so I went with the largest caliper you can get under a 15-inch wheel, which is the Wilwood Superlight. And that's what that looks like. And as you can see, it's sort of, in the picture on the left, it tucks in really nicely into the left corner of the Miata. And there's a PDM behind it that provides power for the ABS, but also more importantly, gave me wheel speed sensors, gave me four inputs so I could get the wheel speed sensors from the MK60 unit back into my ECU and then into my data system. And so my car runs the Haltech ECU, and it's linked to the AIM dash, and that's where I get all my data.
And this is your windshield wiper motor that's telling it when it's wet. Wet.
Exactly. The very important windshield wiper motor, which particularly in Seattle, I think was, although,
My neck of the woods, exactly.
yeah,
I just wanted to point that out that that's not
yeah,
part of what he's talking
yeah,
about.
that's
But
not part of that. So you can
everything
just
else
see, yeah,
here
that's the
is.
pump hanging on the firewall. And then the two things that are floating in front of it are brake pressure sensors. Those would on an E46 M3 would be on the master cylinder,
Mhm.
but obviously this is not an E46. And so that's part of the retrofit is to figure out where you want to put the brake pressure sensors because the system needs front and rear brake pressure
Yeah,
as part of its
four lines.
inputs. So.
Four lines heading out towards the calipers, right?
Yeah, this was a picture while the kit was being installed. So, or you could just leave the wires there and close the hood on it and
Yeah, probably
work.
not a good option. Okay,
Yeah,
let's go back to this slide and just talk for just a moment before the way this presentation is gonna work. We're gonna jump in and out a little bit. We're gonna talk a little bit about. Jeff's already talked about what his problem was or why he decided to do it. A little bit about what they did to the car, and now we're going to jump in and make the case for this. We're going to look at some data that is showing him pre-ABS versus some other data that he's done. This slide here, we're going to jump out and look at some live data, come back to the presentation a little bit, and then jump back out to live data again. So we'll be jumping around a little bit. If you have questions, make sure you put them up into the question box. That's where I can find them a little bit easier. If you put them in the chat, it's a little bit harder for me to find. And so, Jeff, you want to talk a little bit about this slide, and then we will jump
yeah,
out
we could just
into
jump
your
right into
live screen.
the live data if you want.
Okay, let me stop the share, and
Okay.
you share your screen, and we will take a look at some live data. So if you have questions about the data, what you see, make sure you pass those along as a question, and we will take a minute and talk about it. It's
Sounds good.
not showing up yet, Jeff. Just so you know,
Oh,
unless it might be behind. I might have this
oh,
behind.
sorry, I
Yeah,
was
nope,
sharing. Let's see.
it's not showing. There it comes. Now it's showing. There we go. It just showed up.
Okay. Cool. Love the technology. So as I mentioned, within COM and particularly within the GLTC class, we share a lot of data. And my good friend Brandon Gannam, who runs an RX-8 with a K swap because everything's swapped, and I share quite a bit of data together. We're both big data weens. He's got a nice PDM32 set up in his car. Also runs a Haltech ECU. And his car natively has ABS from Mazda. And so looking last year in 2024, I was able to look at his data versus mine, and he was quicker than me, right? Like, so that's sort of always a frustration. Like, well, why are these people consistently quicker than me? But then when you have data and can sit down and look at it, it can be really eye-opening. And in this case, I'm the orange lap, and Brandon, who we can maybe refer to as my nemesis, is in the red lap. And particularly, so this is New Hampshire running the road course that uses the oval plus the road course off the back part. You can kind of see, particularly at the first corner here, that Brandon brakes quite a bit later than I do. It does a better job of maintaining min speed. And if you look here, right, if we kind of look on the way in, right, there's 6 or 7 tenths of a second difference there just in the braking zone.
Well, that is a big braking zone, though. You're coming down from a lot of mile per hour.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, if we could look at the speeds here, right? We're 100 and 108 miles an hour down. It's like a 35, 38 mile an hour corner,
Yeah,
depending on how you're doing.
pulling a lot of speed out of the car.
Exactly. And more than that, there's stuff to hit right at the end of that. There's a big tire wall with concrete behind it. And so, definitely a corner you don't want to lose your brakes at. And so, so for me, this was like the big eye-opening moment of, wow, in the big braking zones, Brandon was definitely faster than me. There are places where, like, you could definitely see where I had, as Peter Krause says, right, moments of brilliance. I drive some sections better, but in the braking zones, Brandon was definitely better. And if you look at through here, this is what we call the bowl. You can see his min speed is quite a bit better. He tapers off quite a bit nicer. Here at turn 9, the same thing. And so like I said, this for me was like a real eye opener of wow, the confidence is there. And so I've been driving a car without ABS for a long time. I've driven on Hoosiers, I've driven on street tires, and the thing, maybe just I'll say that's the obvious thing. If you've never driven a car without ABS, particularly street car, maybe on street tires, that if you're braking and a wheel locks up, you have to release the brake pedal to take that wheel out of lock, right? There's no, so you're in this conundrum of like, well, I need to stop or I need to slow down, but I also like, but I'm not slowing down because I've got a wheel locked up and maybe the car's not handling well. And so the only way out of that is to not brake. And so I was in this mindset of always leaving room, right? And for me, it was also really telling when I was racing with Grid Life at Lime Rock, the best place to pass is under braking at turn one, but I didn't want to risk a wheel lock up and driving into somebody's door, right? Like that's the sort of the
Never
unfriendly
a good thing.
competitor.
Yeah, never a good thing.
Exactly. So yeah, so if you look here, so this is what started the conversation as I was looking through this data and seeing all these places where in braking zones, whether they were big braking zones or sort of um, maybe sort of sweepers, like this is what we see here at 6 and at 9. Um, that the ABS was definitely giving him an advantage. And so, I've always sort of said like I either wanted a car with ABS or a car with a sequential transmission. And I think the sequential is expensive, maybe more fun, but I think the reality in terms of lap time, the ABS system showed big promise. So let me stop sharing. We can jump back to the slide deck if there's no other
Okay.
questions.
Okay. Let me
And
share.
I saw a question here about asking Brandon losing time in acceleration zones. Partly, Brandon last year was chasing some clutch and transmission problems that were causing some of his shifts to be slower than he would have liked. And so, again, this was really cool to be able to dive into data and understand the places where he was struggling versus me. And I think he's got a little better transmission setup this year. So Brandon slash my nemesis will come back later at the end as we're looking at some data. So.
So just to get us all caught up, the first slide and then the live data we saw was you without ABS and Brandon, the nemesis, being able to compare that data. We didn't dig deep into the throttle trace or the brake, but the speed trace is telling it all, right?
Exactly.
So what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at car performance. Explain what we're looking at here as far as the slide, and then jump in.
Sure thing. So one of the things early on as I had the ABS system in is I wanted to try to understand where and when the ABS system was kicking in and to try to be able to understand what I was feeling in the car, but also how the car was performing and what the ABS system was doing. And so in this slide, if you look in the middle panel, this is rear wheel speeds as the green and red plots. And then the blue plot is the difference in rear wheel speeds. And so that when the plot either climbs or drops, you can see that's the case where the ABS would be kicking in. And so you can definitely see, and we could also pop into live data on this too if we wanted to in a bit. But you can definitely see there's cases where the ABS is actuating. There's some cases it's 5 or 6 mile an hour difference between the two wheel speeds. And I think for me, and this will sort of be telling a little bit of what we're going to talk about later. I was more impressed or more sort of surprised by how much the ABS system helps at the end of the braking zone where you're starting to fade into a little bit of trail braking, starting to get the car to turn more, but just fading off the brakes. That for me, I was surprised how that more often than not, the system was more active there than on the way into a big braking zone, where you're probably the car's maybe a little bit more straight, a little more gathered up. And that's not what I would have expected. I would have expected a lot more, and maybe that means I need to be more aggressive with the braking initially, that I'm maybe not finding the edge. And this is all part of my exploration. Like I'm no expert when it comes to braking. And it's just been fun to have the data to sort of dive in and both pose questions and answer them.
No, that's perfect. That's what the data really is. When you started to talk about this and you started to throw up your experiences, it was like I was thinking, this is going to be a good chat because it's you are coming into it maybe not knowing everything that you want to know, and then the data is showing you things, and then you're applying it, and then going faster with it again. So I look forward to continuing to do this. Not only do you show the two wheel speeds, and then if you don't have the math channel, which is just subtracting one from the other, the other way we used to look at it is look at the jaggediness of the speed trace. This green one, you can see it when you zoom in on the live data.
Yeah.
We'll see it a little bit more, but the visually you can see that it's happening. But boy, the math channel really helps it. The other part is you put in the brake pressure, you invert it. A lot of people love to do that, invert it so it's going down, and then you threw in the lateral G, so we can see when you start that trail brake. piece of it, and when you start to make that inside tire light, and we can start to actually see pretty quickly that this is happening right when this is happening, right? So
Exactly.
there is a
Exactly.
direct correlation of when that ABS is having to go to work.
Yep.
Okay, go ahead and explain anything else here, or
Sure.
we can jump into your live
I think that's good. You want to jump on to the next slide?
next
Because I think
slide.
that'll
Okay.
cover sort of the story we're going to tell.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So we've talked about some of this, but right, like I've been driving a car for 20 plus years without ABS on the track. Was not a bad breaker, but definitely always felt like I was you know, was leaving a little bit on the table. Also had a big brake failure at turn one at Watkins Glen and met the wall at 50 miles an hour. And so, right, it's as you always want to leave a little bit of margin of error in case things happen. And so as I was going into this, I think, and I even talked to you, Roger, like, what do I want to look for in the data, but what can I expect? And one of my worries was is that I would, by going into sort of very super late, very hard braking, I'd risk sort of blowing my min corner speeds and actually just over slowing everywhere for the sake of, well, man, look at this magic ABS stuff I have now. And sure enough, that's the case in some of my cases, right? That I did brake harder, I did brake shorter, right? So compress that braking zone, but so I initially started out braking at the same starter braking point, the SOB point, and in some cases, my min speed was better, and I generally found that like those were big sweepers. But big braking zones with sort of uh, lots of risk, I tended to overslow a little bit, more than I would do before. So I knew that that's something I had to work on. But my first time out, I definitely was seeing improved lap times, and so okay, right, that made the case was made, and it was good. And so as we look at some of my later data, we're going to look at 3 different weekends. I was able to move the starter braking point later, brake harder. Um, Avoid overslowing, I think is finally like within the most recent couple of outings of the track, I'm finally starting to relearn that. But I think again, the biggest thing that I'm seeing, and I think is maybe the case where I'm finding the most time, is actually through what I saw like fast sweepers, corners where there's not a huge amount of braking, but that you're definitely doing some braking, but you can sort of count on having the car well balanced at the end of the braking zone as you initiate the turn in. And for me, that was a surprise. Right, you sort of expect, oh, brake in a straight line, right? The car's going to, ABS is going to be great, but that was really for me the eye opener.
Interesting. Bruce had a question though that I think maybe we can go on here before we jump into the live data.
Yep.
Does the E46 ABS remove the brake bias system, the Miata's
So
included brake bias system?
yep. So for the guidance I got is that it would be good to have a separate brake bias valve in case the ABS system failed, because it does bias internally on its own. In a case of a failure, so if the ABS system failed and I needed to just run without it, having a bias valve would have been helpful. And so we replaced the stock Mazda bias valve with a Willwood, adjustable bias valve.
Adjustable. Okay.
And we sort of set it mid-range based on pressure sensors, and never really haven't touched it since. The car has been great without
ABS
it.
hasn't failed, right?
Correct, correct. But I've heard horror stories, not horror stories. I've heard stories from people who had it in, like if they had a failure to sort of keep the weekend alive, you could, pull the fuses or shut it off at the PDM, and then you can adjust the bias separately.
A lot of new cars, though, with the ABS, there is no biasing at all, and when you lose, even a wheel speed sensor,
Yep.
it's
It
almost
becomes a
lights
very
out, right?
different
It's
car.
very,
Yeah.
very difficult, So,
Yep. Yeah.
so
It really is kind of a testament to how easily the Mark 60 system is to just transplant into a random car and have it
yeah,
work well out of the box. So,
yeah, very interesting. You
yeah,
ready to go on the next slide?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, let's take a look at your first weekend at Palmer when you're running your ABS, and who are you comparing against here? Is this you against you,
So
or are
this
you
is
against
me.
somebody else?
This is me previous year. So with the same engine, but basically the ABS. And you can see, and we'll dive a bit, but we'll sort of just skip through these really quickly because it'll be easier to dive in with the bigger data. But you can see at the first corner, I did brake later, but I overslowed, right?
Yep.
The green graph went under it. And the same thing at the next corner, which is turn four at Palmer, same thing. I did brake a little bit later, but I overslowed. But then if you look at the next corner
Yeah.
and the corners after that, I definitely started to find a little more comfort at the big high speed corners where there was braking, but not anywhere near as much of a braking zone as like one and four. And so that for me felt really promising. Like I was getting a reward while I knew I really needed to work on my ability to brake later, but not over brake.
One of the things that while people are looking at this, one of the things I asked you right off the bat was the brake pressures that we're seeing here, were they the same brake pressure sensor
Yep.
as it was for both cars? And then you said it was. So these numbers, these pressures are apples to apples comparisons, and you can see how he's actually hitting a little bit harder, getting into the ABS, no doubt, a
Yep.
little bit here. But there's times when you're still floating it a little bit, coming off of the brake, even though either that's a release or you old habits are hard to break, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this was my first weekend with the
Yep.
car with ABS. So this was it just was like the first time out, and partly just like building up enough confidence that no, it's not going to leak and kill me. Um, you know, and I was able to start pushing with it.
Yeah, you can see the green one, which is the one with the ABS. Some pretty big lifts as you're turning in, right? You're starting that
Yep.
trail brake process. You're still doing it, which is I don't know if that's a bad thing, right? But because you can feel it in your foot still with that ABS, right? If it is active, you can feel it.
Definitely. It was most of the time you can feel a pedal pulsation when it's active. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
But I think there's definitely times when it's active and there's not a lot of pedal feedback. So that was the useful thing to be able to dive in and look at the slide we looked at first, where you could actually see the wheel speed deltas. Um,
So when it's barely hitting, you're not getting that feedback to your
e-
foot. It's
exactly.
until it's large before you feel it. Interesting.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
Yeah. So yeah, let's jump on to the next slide. Um, so more recently, and this was quite a bit after my that what we're calling the first weekend. This was Watkins Glen about a month ago. And Watkins Glen's a track I don't have a lot of laps at. And definitely feel like it's a track I struggle with, particularly the bus stop. I don't know why. It's on my to-do list. I've got to get better at it. But this was sort of more of the same pattern. Again, if you look at turn one, right, a little bit of over braking, a little bit of over slowing on the green lap. Um, and previous year at the bus stop, which is the second sector there, I actually went and looked at the video to see, like, did I have somebody in front of me? Like, why was that so slow? And it's just no, I just was like, wasn't feeling it that day because that's a huge delta. Um, but then, right, the good stuff. If you look at the start of sector three, which is down into the carousel, and at the toe, which is center of sector three there, huge gains in
Yeah.
mid corner. And again, I think it's the real surprise there that that's the place where I'm really finding gains. And if you think about sort of the mix of corners on a racetrack, yeah, you might have a couple of really big, oh my God, braking zones, but you've got a lot more generally of these big sort of fast average speed corners. Uh, and it, for me anyway, but with my car, with my platform, it just felt so much better, and I just had so much more confidence in a way that was really unexpected.
You certainly were getting you got off the brake sooner. You were able to get back to the throttle a ton
Yep.
quicker,
Yeah.
and shoot on down. And this one's even better yet, right? And all the rest of the corners are all looking pretty good.
Exactly. So that felt pretty good. And then so if we go to the next slide, which is sort of my most recent outing, which is at Thompson here in the Northeast, and this is also a road course that uses the NASCAR type oval. And I kind of felt like this was the weekend where everything really came together well. If you look at the green lap versus the yellow lap, braking later, but not overslowing, right? So
Hmm.
finally, figuring out how to manage that pace at the mid corner. And then if you look at the next corner there, which is turn
Yeah,
three,
fantastic.
huge gains. And
Yeah,
it's
fantastic.
sort of a funny corner that is lots of camber early. And so it's a corner where you just sort of get off the brake, chuck the car in, and there's a lot of good banking that helps, but also the track gets quite a bit wider at the exit. And so for me, that was like maybe some of my best laps through that corner. Um, and then the same thing, if you go in and look at this, it's sort of the end of sector three there, or sorry, sector two, and then the corners in sector three, that's all was just all really nice improvements in big corner speed. Uh, and particularly I'll talk a little bit more about this when we dive into the data there. That's exiting, that corner there is exiting off the NASCAR surface, and
Okay.
it's kind of a funny corner. It's very bumpy, downhill a little bit into into sort of a semi-bank corner. And I was really happy to sort of see the way my speed sort of plateaued, but there was a really nice progression because it's almost like a two-phase slowdown,
Yeah.
if you think about it
Boom,
that way.
and then boom again. Yeah.
Yeah, and so like again, it's like I said, when I saw that, I was like, this that's actually was really promising. And we'll in the live data, we'll bring my nemesis back because my friend Brandon is still just a little bit quicker than me. comparing some of his data from March when it was cooler versus this. But he's still got a few tenths on me, and so I look at it as I've got learning to do. I've got work to do. So,
And
uh,
and and we're noticing here that you do give it a little bit of a dab ahead,
hmm,
and I didn't notice that in slide two as much. But is that just this track you think, or is that something that because
partly,
of
yeah. One
just
of the
getting
things
used to it, you just want to make sure that something's there?
I've had persistent pad knockback with this car
Oh, okay,
forever,
so you're starting to notice it more.
yeah, and so I'm just I mean, again, having lost my brakes at turn one at the Glen, I'm definitely a pretty consistent left foot dabber. I can definitely have some pretty significant pad knockback, and like I said, the car's got spherical bearings and really tight suspension, so it's I don't know if it's that. It's still stock calipers in the back,
Yeah.
but we're still trying to figure out what might be causing it, and not really had much luck figuring that out. So yeah, I'm a very persistent left foot.
Well, it's not hurting you obviously, but it's but the other thing is since you're able to get after the brakes so much harder with the ABS right initially, you need to get the
Yeah,
pad back so when you get after it, the pedal is up high
it's right there.
and feels
Yeah.
right correct to you. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have any problem with somebody doing that in a car
And,
I was working with.
and interestingly, the places where like maybe I've had some knockback, the ABS gives me quite a bit more confidence. Like the pedal will be deep, but it feels confident slowing down,
Mm.
and in a way that I didn't necessarily trust it when it would do that without the ABS. Like I feel like, you know, I can just trust that I can go really deep with the pedal. And unless it's a really, really big braking zone, I'm probably going to have enough pedal to slow it down. I had one time at the Palmer where I forgot to tap it on the front straight, and you know, it was it was a little worrisome.
Yeah, mentally
But
it's like ooh, it went down, and probably it only goes down an inch farther, but it feels like it's
oh, it just
four
feels
inches longer,
terrible,
right?
you know. Yeah, and then it's then you sort of all your focus is on slowing down,
Oh
so you blow
yeah.
the downshift, and yeah, it's like all manners of bad. Um,
Okay, the so we've kind of talked a little bit about this. We'll probably jump into the live data now, I suppose.
yeah.
But while I stop my share, Kyle has a question there that I think is kind of interesting, and I'm not sure it's 100% needed or not. I'm interested to hear your answer. Do you wish you could adjust the MK60 for condition changes, especially dry to wet? What do you think about that? As I stop my share, and you can start to share
Yes,
yours.
that's a good question. So it's funny, I actually have not had a lot of wet experience with the ABS
Mm,
yet. We've sort of had a pretty decent season, and either like I've chosen like I've been because I also instruct, right? So I'm often really busy, either doing data coaching or in car stuff. And so there are times when I'm like, well, if it's going to rain, I may not throw the rain tires on for one session. I may just sit that out. So I don't have a lot of experience with the car in the wet, and so I would say TBD. Again, everybody I've talked to said that the system out of the box is really amazing, well set up for what you would see in a street tire sort of basis. So, um, yeah, I guess
okay.
that's the old like I don't know. Would love to
We
find out.
we will see, and we'll try to maybe we'll bring you back after you have a good long wet weekend in the spring, right? And we
Yeah,
can chat a little
exactly.
bit about it.
Yeah.
So
And it is
okay,
interesting to see Kyle's comment on the check valves. And that is interesting because I've thought about using the check valves. Matt had some feedback against them, but I figure I may give them a whirl because I've got sort of nothing else to try at this point. So thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that.
okay, okay. What are we looking at here? Is this akin to your second example that we first looked at?
Correct. So this was the making the case video, right? Or
Okay,
the making the case, right? Sorry, no, this was first weekend out,
first slide.
and this
Okay,
will give us a chance to go through. I also wanted to comment on a feature I haven't really used much, but AIM added this feature to allow comments where you can basically link comments to different points in the data traces. And I just it's really handy for this presentation, but it's also maybe something to think about for other stuff if you want to have the ability to go back and look at interesting data points. So yeah, nice feature.
we did chat about it a couple of webinars ago. If you want to look into it, but it's as simple as right where he's got his mouse right there. There's a little green plus sign in the upper right corner, and no matter where your cursor's at when you hit that button, it's going to put a little marker there for you, give you an option to put in some text, and then let you link directly to it. And very very handy. I found it to be a very cool little tool.
Yeah. So this was sort of my first weekend out, and this is comparing, basically almost it's June of 2024 to April of 2025. And what is it? It was almost a second and a half quicker. Not all under braking. Part of it was, being a little more confident elsewhere in the track, better tires, all the litany of excuses that can come out. Uh, but you can, as we talked about earlier, right? This is kind of what I was worried would happen. I would brake later, but I would just sort of while I was recalibrating things over slow. And it's interesting to talk about how people brake. Like I'm a brake by feel sort of person. Like I don't use physical references on the track generally. And so that's also been kind of an interesting challenge as I've been doing this, is I've needed to find ways to move my braking points forward but not really knowing, well, like what is, right? I just sort of like I do it when it's the right time, but if I know that I need to do it later, well, then my idea of right is not right.
How
So
long has that retraining of your mental or your eyesight been? Has that been an all year kind of a thing? Was that
it,
something you were able to adjust to fairly quickly?
no, I think it has been because it's also different tracks, right? Like particularly at
Oh,
Thompson, which is
yeah.
where we'll end up, that it has really good braking boards along the left side, but again, it's you want to be looking to the right side because it's a right-hand corner. So, I was using them, trying to keep them in my peripheral vision and count the, 654 and hopefully break between the 4 and 3. Um, I was braking closer to the 5 before. So,
Oh.
yeah, so that's been interesting. And it just, again, this just challenge of like, well, how do you brake? Is it by reference? Is it by feel? Um, you
I
know,
talked to a lot of different people, and I have found some very very good breakers that do it naturally and just
yeah,
looking at their vision and don't use something, and then but the bulk of people do use the braking boards or that curb start or that crack in the rotor, whatever,
yeah.
something that they found that they use. But I've talked to some pretty darn good high level professional drivers that don't do that on all of the corners. The big ones maybe they do where they're really pronounced or something, right? But
Exactly.
a lot of people still will brake just with that visual cue.
Yeah, I kind of call it doing the math, right? Like
Yeah.
you're taking in all this visual information and your brain, figures out like, hey, it's probably a good time to start braking.
But I could see where a big change from non-ABS to ABS, that would be an additional learning curve that would need to be handled,
Definitely.
because now you've changed your entire. You need to recalibrate that math you're doing in your head. That's interesting.
Exactly. Plus, it's the survival instinct, right? Like
Exactly.
what do they say, wait till you see God and then break, and
Exactly.
so yeah, right as we talked about, this is what I thought would happen, and you can see how much this costs, right? The later braking gained, if you look at the time compare bar, maybe gained me 3/10, but then I lost it all by being, slow back to the throttle, um, and just not, trying to recover from what is that? That's a 5 mile an hour delta. No, it's a 3 mile an hour delta there. Um, and my goal for this corner is always to sort of have a, sort of mid 60s min speed. And you can see here 65 is sort of my goal. I sometimes will come through there with 67 or 68 and feel pretty good. But yeah, 62 was not so great. And so, it's always this tail of the tape, right? It gives in and it takes away. And the same thing here at 4. This is a big braking zone uphill, also where I've had a brake issue and bumped a tire bundle. And so these things that stick in your head of like, maybe not so good. But you can see again, massive overslowing and right the time differential curve here shows. I always love this when it's like it gives and then it takes away.
Yeah.
Um, like it was good, but then it wasn't. And I'm gonna skip through this because this is no braking here. This is just pure sort of feeling comfortable in the car. But if we look at the next two, so these big sweepers, this is a downhill sweeper where the car really wants to understeer. The track really falls away from you here. And again, it was just such an eye opener of how good the car felt, um, sort of at balance mid corner. Um, and then the same thing at 9, also sort of a banked downhill sweeper. And then the same thing here at 12, right? Or sorry, 13. And then it was interesting. I did bobble a little bit here. If we zoom in, I was good, but I was maybe a little too greedy on getting on the gas right through here, and it caused me to have to lift off quite a bit. And then I got back to the throttle, but then it cost me entering the straight a couple miles an hour. And it's interesting. You can see that basically I never make it up. So that's the tail of that tape.
Yeah, it's but what is interesting to me in this slide is if you look down at your brake pressures, you are still learning to not lift off the brake pedal at this point.
Yep.
You see the green brake trace, which is with ABS. He is still backing off on the brake pressure as he is turning in. Old habits are hard to break. I'm sure at first. So
Yeah. The other thing that we added into this, if there was a shift, is this was, I think, first year with the car had auto blip, and so I was able to, which is also, as you talk about systems that really help the driver, being able to not have to heel toe and just be able to focus entirely on getting your right foot completely over the brake pedal. Because I think, any of us who do heel toe, you occasionally have the time where the foot's not really on the brake, like it's kind of on the brake, and do you fix that? Do you bobble the shift? Like, how do you manage that? And for me, that was another system addition to the car that really made a big difference. So
interesting. One less thing to have to deal with and be able to focus on the braking and learning the braking even better.
exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah. So then if we'll jump on to Watkins Glen, which was the second slide we talked about. Again, you can see my performance here with the green lap, definitely overslowing. And the same thing at the bus stop. Um, and so it's nice to always go back. I'll be back there in a month, and I have stuff to work on, which is always good. But the places where there's big braking zones going, and this is going down into the laces. This is a place where you see lots of cars balled up into the wall. It's an easy place to get off to the right of the track, out into the grass, and then you're done for. In the toe, um, I think it's in a place where I've always overslowed, and to feel this comfortable with the car, you can see how much more brake pressure I'm applying, and the car just felt rewarding.
So rewarding that you got to the exit there and you had to get out of the throttle. You were going so good,
Exactly. I
right?
was going to run off the track. I think that was I remember that lap where I'm like, oh, I'm definitely
Okay, I
going
better
to use all
give.
the pavement and then some.
I better give.
Uh, But then if we continue to look on here, from the toe and on, each one of these corners that are fast sweepers, the car just feels so much better at sort of the end of the trail braking that, uh, yeah, it's just a more rewarding car to drive.
And before you leave this screen, the again looking at the green brake pressure traces, the
Yep.
the you're halfway there. It looks like to me with getting out of the brake right there as you're turning in.
Yep.
There's some of these that you don't do it at all. So you're learning that, and that's an important piece because when you right at that spot when you have to start to release the brake, you're starting to mess with the chassis dynamics, and
Yep.
so you're going to induce that understeer if you're doing that, and if you can get away from that mindset of having to let the your brake pressure catch your tire slip instead of allowing the ABS to do it, all of a sudden you're making the chassis work, which is something you've said 3 or 4 times here. The car is just more settled and more is feeling better, and I feel it's because of you're not having to release the brake and they get in the chassis to do the little dance there, right?
Exactly. And you can see my left foot tap,
Yeah, yeah,
pretty predictable through here.
yeah.
Um, as so really say,
I don't have a big problem with that at all.
yeah,
If it's the comfort, number one, the comfort, but number two, the bigger piece is if the pad knockback is significant, it's going to be better in the next 100 feet later because you've done it. So anything you may
definitely.
have lost, which you really haven't, if you look at your speed traces, there's no dip there.
Yeah.
That makes the braking all the better. Let's continue to do it until you get the pad knockback fixed.
Yeah, I'll have to let Kyle know if the valves do the answer here. So
I used them in an off-road race car for many, many years, and we had to bump up a little higher because we were really knocking the brakes around. But it did help a lot with our turning brakes and some other things that they really did help, and we did not notice a noticeable. Some people will say keeping the residual pressure on the pads will take away a little bit of acceleration or top speed, and
yeah,
I don't think there's enough pad knockback happening there, and it's just pushing it back towards it that I have not found it to be a huge detriment. But I'm looking forward to hearing a real life example with you when you try them.
yeah, that'll be a follow on. The
Yeah,
one thing I don't like, I don't have four wheel pressure sensors. I wish I had a way to determine where the knockback was coming from. It's one of
ah,
my, being a data guy, like I feel like I'm trying to solve a problem that I don't understand because I don't know where the knockback's coming from. the entire braking system has been replaced, new calipers, new pads, new spindles in the case of the front, because people would say sometimes the spindles, on the Miata, like it's a convertible from 1990, right? It's not
Yeah.
meant for this. And I just don't know. And for me, that's just the most frustrating thing is I don't have the tools in the way the car's set up right now to be able to understand where might that knockback be coming from.
We as a family raced the 1990 Spec Miata
Yep.
in the 2005 2006 era, and the pad knockback was such that it was something I was going to resolve before we raced the next year. My son ended up moving up to a different class, but and I haven't studied it here. It'll be interesting
Yep.
to get your data a little bit closer. But we were noticing we were able to find those particular corners where he was using a lot of curbing and
Yeah.
getting the bearings were fairly tight. I mean, we
Yep.
always kept fresh stuff, but that little bit of movement there, we would actually see the brake pressure being applied to
Yep.
the with his foot off the brake. We would see just a
Yep.
tiny little spikes of 8 to 10 psi in the brake pressure trace that we had added to the car. We only had a single one, so we didn't know which corner it was, but we knew it was happening. And then after
Yep.
that, it would be a longer pedal. So that's
And
something for you to look at, maybe as
it
study
is.
it a little
And
bit.
my brake pressure sensor's in the rear channel, just because of the way it's easiest to plumb into the Miata. And so the fact that I'm not seeing like those
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 kind of
knockback
okay,
induced ones on the fronts or the rears makes me think it's the front.
exactly.
Um,
It was the
and
fronts
but
for us, from what I recall. So
yeah, it really is crazy. And for me, like because I've had so much knockback problem, I try to avoid curbs that's particularly
okay.
really bad curbs, which is also hurts me, right? There's places where I could maybe be a little quicker through corners if I could use all the curb.
It's the curb
And
plus the rumble strip is built into the curb is
yeah,
what did it for us.
so in my case, it seems like it's high G load long sweepers are the places where I end up with a deep pedal afterwards.
Ah,
And so,
there you
it
go.
seems like just suspension movement. But yeah, I guess this is the problem, right? This is problems you're trying to solve, and if you don't have all the data, it's really frustrating.
It's
So
kind of fun to have the chat though. Of yes, we're talking about ABS and your learning process and your learning curve,
yeah,
but these are just things that are worked into that same exact long process curve, right?
exactly. And that's been the fun thing. I've like, as I said earlier, right? I've been driving more or less the same car since 2006, but it hasn't been the same car, right? The car has evolved, and then more than that, I've evolved as a driver.
Yeah.
And more than that, like I race with a really good group of people, particularly that I spend most of my time with Com doing time trials. It's a really competitive class, but it's a really good group of people who share data and, try to help each other too. And so that's been the thing is like I've not plateaued as a driver because the car keeps changing, but also my competition keeps changing. And, that's really good.
That, and I don't think anybody ever plateaus as a driver, right? I mean, as amateur road racers, but the so that's the fun part of this, right?
Yeah. And so this is actually a good segue both into sort of wrapping things up, but also I'm going to pull in, we'll talk a little bit about this, but then I'm going to pull in Brandon's data to sort of show where my goals are going forward. So this is Thompson track in Connecticut, partly based on a NASCAR oval. You can kind of, if you look at the picture here, but turn one, uh,
Beautiful.
yeah, turn one, it's an uphill braking zone, but the braking zone, if you don't get your braking done early, the braking it falls off pretty abruptly. And so it's one of those corners that if you're ever late, you're kind of doubly screwed because not only are you too fast, but the track's going to fall away from you pretty quickly. There's some good runoff.
Which one are you?
So this is me. This is me versus me.
Oh, okay,
Your part, and then I'm going to bring Brandon's data in. So this is the yellow was my car without ABS, and
gotcha,
the
perfect.
green is with ABS. And so that for me, this was sort of, yes, things finally coming together, right?
Look
Like
at
I
that
have a,
look at that brake pressure trace difference at the bottom. That's
yeah, so
amazing.
quite a bit later, and but no overslowing at the end,
Yeah.
right? Which is, really nice, a much better release. And, if we look at the time delta there, almost 3/10 just
Yeah,
in the braking zone to turn in. Um,
three
and
tenths,
then
big number.
Yeah, and I'm very often in a class that the top people will be within a half a second or so, right? So it's
And that's one corner. It takes
yeah,
more than
exactly.
half of the difference. Yeah,
Yeah. And then so this is sort of the corners that I've been, the sort of corner that I became more comfortable with maybe more
beautiful,
quickly
beautiful.
is this, sort of high speed sweeper, tuck it in. It's interesting, the brake traces look almost the same, but a little earlier release, but later application. If we zoom into that. Um, and being able to roll quite a bit more corner speed on the entry, If we look at what's our delta there, so 225 to there, so quarter
Yeah.
of a second,
Yeah.
right?
Another quarter of a second.
Another exactly, and that's pretty soon. It's like these start adding up, and it's like, wow, pretty soon it's real time. And then so this is turn four. They call it the clubhouse turn. It's a tight keyhole corner. Again, kind of some stuff to hit up close if you bobble your braking zone. Not good runoff. And you can see here definitely later, but I still have room to improve. Right, I overslowed and the time slip at the bottom. 456 to 40. So this corner cost me 500s, right?
But your brake pressure trace shows me that you recognized you were a little deep right
Yep.
there, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden you went after more aggressive on the brake pedal, which
Yep.
then overslowed it a little bit right at the
Exactly.
apex.
Yep. And the good thing is, though, at least with the overslow, like,
Yeah,
the
it did
green
it.
light did come out faster. So it wasn't terrible, but
Yeah.
again, room to improve. I'll jump back to
And the ABS gave you the room to do that, right? It
correct.
normally, if you'd have been in that same position with a non-ABS car, it would have locked up the two inside
Oh,
tires,
totally. It's
and
a common place for lockup because of the way the
you'd
track
have
sort
missed
of
the apex, and you'd have
falls
been
away
way
from
out
you.
to the right and having to wait a long time on the throttle.
Oh, yeah.
So no,
So
perfect.
yeah, so this is the entry, the sort of under the bridge corner. And again, I was really happy when I saw the sort of deceleration curve here. A little bit of overslowing, but I think again it was kind of not a bad performance. But
Yeah.
I do see a behavior that I want to keep working on, and that's been sort of the thing. Is I've always tried to go out with, as I looked at my data, I would go out with a couple corners that I knew I needed to work on and how I wanted to work on it. And I'll jump ahead because I think we're starting to get a little close on time. But I wanted to bring just talk about this, but then bring Brandon's data back in, who was my friend with the RX-8 who started this whole sort of conversation. For me, this is the exit off of the NASCAR oval. Kind of a funny corner configuration, falls away from you. It's pretty bumpy on the entry, not a lot of runoff. And it's kind of a throwaway corner as well, kind of like in some ways like New Hampshire's left-hander, or sorry, Lime Rock's left-hander, if you're familiar with that. But I really like the way I saw this deceleration, and it's almost like a double deceleration. You sort of throw away the early part, and it's really about setting up the right hander because particularly for me at a Miata, the front straight really starts back here. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of lift to get the car to turn in here, but it's one big zone of acceleration. So let me hop back
Considering that
here.
second half of that slowdown there was non-brake related, it was just the G forces just pulling speed out of the
Correct.
car.
Yep. So now I'll throw Brandon back into here, and he's red as he's always been. And you can see Brandon still's got some data to show me, right? He's braking just a tad later. His brake pressure is high enough that I probably need to rescale this a little bit. Um, and he does a much better job at the end of corner, but I actually beat him just a tad on mid corner speed. And so I can kind of feel good about that. And if you look at my exit,
Yeah,
I exit a little better, right?
yeah.
And he and I have a very similar curve here at turn three, which I felt pretty good about. My early laps, if you looked at my previous year in the orange lap, not a great performance, but when I saw this, I was actually rather happy.
Absolutely.
Um, and at the
Real happy
keyhole
there.
turn four
Yeah.
here, he does that exceptionally well. And this is also when you start to look at both the excuse generator, but also car differences. He's running, I think, 17 or 18-inch wheels, much bigger tire. I think he's maybe on 275s. I'm on 225s. And so it starts to, while we're similarly classed, the cars are definitely different, right? I'm 2,450 pounds. I think he's 2,800 pounds. And so it's very interesting to look at cars that are similar but very different in terms of how you make pace. And you can see, I think maybe he's got a little bit of a lateral acceleration advantage. Um, but then if we jump back here to the end at
Uh,
turn nine coming off the oval, I've definitely got work to do. Like
you've gotten halfway there, it looks like.
exactly, exactly. Um, but when I saw that shape, I was just super happy of the way
Yeah.
that's what I was really going for, was more of a gradual deceleration rather than a big drop. And so that made me really happy. So, the good thing is this is just, I consider this the start of the journey. I'm like halfway through the season, really starting to get comfortable with the platform. And, I've got lots of work to do too, which is also the fun part.
Absolutely.
I'll stop sharing here if you want to, probably time to wrap up, I guess.
Yeah, I will share mine in a moment. There's a couple of questions that I thought maybe you could answer as I was getting things prepared.
Yeah.
Bruce talks about you are a sim racer, and you do a little bit of that, right?
Yep.
And you're real. How do you adjust between those two? Keep
So
it in the ABS world, if or just
y-
the general world?
yeah, so actually, funnily, since I started down this ABS path, I have not been doing any sim racing this year, and
Hmm.
so I don't have good data there. So it's funny, a lot of the cars in sim racing don't have ABS.
Ah,
Depends on the car you're in, but I think if you were more often than not, you'd probably have a car in there that is non-ABS versus ABS.
you probably do the MX-5 Cup cars. They
That
have ABS if you
that's
wish
probably
to.
it, right?
The
Yeah,
closest probably for you for what you're doing. Are you
yeah.
using the stock Mazda reluctor rings, or did you get something different with the MK60s?
Nope. So using the stock Mazda rings
Okay.
and the ABS sensors from the E46.
Yeah, okay.
So I think the only thing you have to worry about is you just want to make sure you have the same tooth count front and rear. Uh, Obviously.
You
Yeah.
make it a little confused.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So they're a little bit of a technical on how you put it together. Very good.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll share my screen here again.
I like that Matt comment about the driver excuse card. Yeah, I always like to poke fun at myself because we're all, we all have excuse generators ready to go.
You even have it probably computerized, right? You can just hit a random generator.
Exactly. I've got an app for that, as they say.
Matt Romanowski is in the back. He's talking about from Trail Break, and he said something earlier that I thought was kind of interesting, and we're going to actually chat with him about it. Is Matt mentioned driving a go-kart has forced me to the same sort of braking crisis. Matt has
Interesting.
purchased a go-kart for him and his son, and they've been going out and doing karting, and it's going to be interesting. Matt's going to join us on the 9th of September at the afternoon evening session, the 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Matt's going to come and talk to us about uh, his experience of being a road course racer in his Porsche, and then jumping into a kart where it's a totally different world. And we're going to talk a little about kart data. And one of the things we'll do there is we'll work with him and chat with him a lot about this braking thing, because it is way different in a kart. There is no such thing as, it's very very small that you ever see straight line braking at a kart. They brake so well and they turn so well that it is trail braking just almost exclusively. And so it'll be interesting to hear what Matt has to say on that. Join us on the 9th of September, 6 p.m. Matt will be joining us with some karting data and talking about that. And we'll make sure we throw in a section of what the braking has been different with him. That'll be
And I
fun.
should also take a quick moment to thank Matt because Matt's my local AIM dealer, and yeah, I've got a lot of AIM stuff in the car. And Matt's been a great support, as well as we've been track buddies going out. Him being my nemesis, or wait, I guess I was his nemesis. So
You have a lot of nemesis.
exactly,
Nemesis.
exactly,
You got several S's there at the end of it.
yeah.
It is time to kind of close it on up, but we are recording this. We will be putting this up onto our AIM Sports YouTube page. There's the address if you haven't visited there. We'll be putting that up here within the next hour or so and get it up there, and lots and lots of hits and views happening from there. Get a lot of good feedback from the stuff that we're putting up there. All of these end up there, so make sure you visit there. Pretty good little search bar there, search button there. If you type in, and I've worked hard at making sure the key phrases and everything is tagged in every one of these. So if you're searching for ABS braking or braking generally, just type that into the search bar on the YouTube page, and you're gonna brought up to the top of the page all of the different ones where we've talked about braking. So kind of just a little tip for finding some of the information in all of these webinars. Customer support, boy, we're out there. All of our guys are out there working hard, grabbing folks and helping them whenever we can. So make sure you give us a call if you see us at the track. Call us over if you're at the track and we're not there. There's an 800 number you can call and get a hold of an AIM tech guy during the week. So 800-718-9090. We're really all about the support. So make sure you give us a holler. Again, our next webinar for this series is Tuesday, August 12th. We're going to have CJ Greaves, legendary off-road racer, is going to come join us. CJ's been using data since he was just a youngster in motorsports and has been using it in these off-road trucks. And it's just going to be fun to talk with him about some of the different things that he's doing. That's just a couple weeks ahead of the big World Championships at Crandon. So we'll have a chat with him about how his season has been going so far, and some of the technology in these big Pro 4 trucks. Nearly 1,000 horsepower out of these four-wheel drive trucks, and just 20 some inches of wheel travel, and just absolute beasts. We'll try to have some video where some of you haven't seen what some of these things do. We'll show you what these trucks are capable of, and try to get some pictures with the body off so you can see what these things are. They are full on 100% race vehicles. It's kind of a cool thing. So we will look forward to chatting with CJ. So some contact information. Some of you may have additional questions that you might want to chat with Jeff about. Jeff, you got a email address here? You have any of the social media stuff at all? But or just
I'm on Facebook. I think I'm the only Jeff Wasilko. Instagram, follow me there. Shoot me an email. Always happy to talk. I talked previously about CAN bus and had ongoing conversations with folks about CAN, and so love to talk beta.
Absolutely. Hope everybody enjoyed it. This was one that was fun for me. I find a problem that needs to be resolved. This is where data really works, right? You identify the problem, you set up your aim analysis and the data you're gathering to help you solve the problem, and then Jeff went step by step the processes that he followed as to try to get better and better with ABS. And from what I see here, he's 85-90% there, right there. He has resolved a lot of the problems using the data and with some good understanding. So I love these kind of success stories and show you everybody how he has done it. So it's been a good time. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate you coming in and chatting with us. Anything else you'd like to add on the way out?
Just want to say thank you. AIM makes an amazing set of products, and as I think I maybe even invented it, right? You guys are a product support company that happens to have a data problem. The support and the quality of the hardware and the software, and it's just amazing. To have this set of tools at an amateur level is spectacular, and it's been really nice to see the way like Race Studio 3 has matured over the past few years. It's a great tool, and I really love using it. And having the data in the car has been spectacular. So thanks for a great set of products, and more than that, great support.
You're very, very welcome. I appreciate you being out there, and especially you and some of the others. Certainly a lot of our dealers, Matt, but you're one of those special guys that's out there. You're not selling products, you're not doing anything, but you're actively willing to help people. So I really enjoy, helping and talking with and chatting with folks like you that are out there helping so many different people. That we can't help them all, right? We can't be along with everybody, and you're out there the front of it
always
as well.
Happy to do track support when I'm at the track and help people out with their systems. So
absolutely, it's part of the community that has been built, and we all really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Contact information. There's Jeff's email address. There's mine. If you have any questions about this or suggestions for future webinars, make sure that you drop me a note. I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Jeff. All the guys in the back. Matt, thank you for being the link master and taking care of a lot of that. I appreciate it. Look forward to chatting with everybody again here at our next one. Thanks, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Roger.
Thank you.